The day my husband walked out on me and our 3 daughters, my neighbor leaned against his mailbox, watched me carry boxes into the house alone, and smiled. Then he said something I never forgot. "Looks like your husband finally came to his senses." I was 25 years old. My youngest daughter was still in diapers. And I stood there in the driveway holding a box full of baby clothes while my whole world collapsed around me. I didn't cry in front of him. I just nodded, carried the box inside, and closed the door. But sometimes people mistake silence for weakness. And sometimes they spend years learning the difference. 40 years later, that man is gone. The house is still there. It's still bright pink. And nobody remembers his name. But everybody remembers mine. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 65 years old now. My hair is silver. My knees complain every time it rains. And every Sunday, my grandchildren beg me to tell them the story of the pink house. They laugh when I tell it. But it wasn't funny when it started. Back then it felt like survival. The year was 1985. My husband Mark had been acting distant for months. You know how women know things before they can prove them. That was me. Late nights at work. Secret phone calls. New cologne. The kind of smile that no longer belonged to me. One Tuesday afternoon he came home early. He sat at the kitchen table. Wouldn't look me in the eyes. And I knew. Before he said a word. Before he opened his mouth. Before my heart shattered. I knew. I met someone else. That's all he said. No apology. No explanation. No tears. Just 4 words. Like he was discussing the weather. I remember looking at our daughters. Sarah was 7. Megan was 5. Little Lily was barely 2. They were coloring at the kitchen table, completely unaware that their father was tearing their childhood apart. "You're leaving?" I asked. He nodded. "I already packed." Packed? Like this was a business trip. Like our family was a hotel room he'd checked out of. I stared at him. 25 years old. 3 children. No college degree. No savings worth mentioning. And suddenly alone. "You'll be okay," he said. People always say stupid things when they're trying to avoid guilt. "You'll be okay." As if that fixed anything. As if those words could pay bills. As if those words could explain to 3 little girls why Daddy wasn't coming home. He left that evening. The girls cried themselves to sleep. And I sat in the kitchen until sunrise staring at the empty chair across from me. The next morning was when I met Walter Jenkins. Not officially. I'd seen him before. Everybody had. He lived next door. A retired factory foreman with a permanent scowl and a talent for making everyone uncomfortable. He hated noise. Hated children. Hated dogs. Hated happiness. At least that's what it seemed like. The first thing he said to me after Mark left was, "Looks like your husband finally came to his senses." I should have told him where to go. Instead, I just walked away. I had bigger problems. Or so I thought. What I didn't know was that Walter was about to become the second biggest challenge of my life. The first was raising 3 girls alone. The second lived next door. The weeks after Mark left were brutal. I worked mornings at a diner. Afternoons cleaning offices. Evenings waitressing. Sleep became something I remembered instead of something I got. The girls grew up fast. Too fast. Sarah learned how to make sandwiches. Megan learned how to help with laundry. Lily learned not to ask for things because she knew money was tight. That one broke my heart. Children should never learn that lesson so young. Every night I promised myself we'd make it. And every morning I wondered if I was lying. Then Walter started his campaign. At first it was small. Complaints. Endless complaints. The girls laughed too loud. Complaint. Their bicycles were visible from his yard. Complaint. A ball landed near his fence. Complaint. Wind chimes. Complaint. Birthday party. Complaint. Dog barking 3 houses away. Somehow also my fault. The man treated Joy like a personal attack. One afternoon Sarah accidentally dropped a jump rope near his lawn. She was 7. 7. Walter marched across the street holding that jump rope like it was evidence in a murder trial. Control your kids. I looked at Sarah. She was terrified. The poor thing thought she'd done something horrible. I'm sorry, she whispered. Walter glared at her. You should be. That was the moment something changed inside me. Because it's one thing to bully a struggling young mother. It's another thing entirely to make a child feel small. I wanted to scream. Instead I smiled. Thank you for returning the rope. Then I closed the door. Walter hated that. He wanted fights. He wanted tears. He wanted reactions. What he got was politeness. And it drove him crazy. Years later, one of my daughters told me something interesting. She said, Mom, Walter wasn't angry because we were loud. He was angry because we were happy. I think she was right. Because despite everything, despite the abandonment, despite the money problems, despite the double shifts, we still laughed. We still celebrated birthdays. We still decorated for Christmas. We still planted flowers. And every bit of joy seemed to offend him. Then came the day that changed everything. The day of the bicycle. Lily had just learned to ride. She was 6 by then. Tiny little thing. Bright blonde curls. She spent weeks practicing. Falling. Getting back up. Falling again. Finally, one Saturday morning, she rode all the way down the street by herself. No training wheels. No help. Just pure determination. She was so proud. I was standing in the yard clapping. Sarah and Megan were cheering. And Lily had chosen the brightest bicycle she'd ever seen. Pink. Not soft pink. Not pale pink. Bright bubblegum pink. The kind of pink that practically glowed in sunlight. Walter walked outside. Saw the bicycle. And immediately frowned. Then he looked directly at me. You know what's wrong with this neighborhood? I honestly didn't know where this was going. No. People with no standards. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because the statement was ridiculous. That made him even angrier. He pointed at Lily's bike. That thing is hideous. Lily heard him. I watched her smile disappear. Just like that. Gone. A 6-year-old girl. Proud of her first bicycle. And a grown man couldn't resist ruining the moment. Then he said something that would change the next 40 years. The only thing worse than noisy kids is that ridiculous color. He pointed again. Pink is the ugliest color God ever created. The girls went quiet. Walter stormed back inside. And I stood there staring after him. Thinking. Very carefully. Very quietly. About pink. That night after the girls went to bed, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. I looked at Walter's dark gray house. His dark gray car. His dark gray mailbox. His dark gray life. And I started smiling. For the first time in months. Not because life was easy. Not because things were improving. But because an idea had appeared. A beautiful idea. A ridiculous idea. An unforgettable idea. And the moment it entered my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about it. 3 weeks later, Walter came home from the grocery store. He parked in his driveway. Looked across the street. And dropped an entire bag of groceries. Because my house was no longer white. It was pink. Very, very pink. And that was only the beginning. One bag of groceries had slipped from his hands. A can of soup rolled across the pavement. A loaf of bread landed upside down. And all he could do was stare. My house was pink. Not a little pink. Not maybe that salmon pink. Not rose-colored pink. No. It was bright. Cheerful. Impossible to ignore pink. The kind of pink that announced itself from 3 streets away. I had spent every spare dollar I could justify. Not enough to be irresponsible. Just enough to make a statement. The shutters were pink. The trim was pink. The flower boxes were pink. Even the mailbox was pink. My daughters had helped choose the exact shade. And seeing their excitement had made every penny worth it. Walter looked like a man witnessing the end of civilization. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then he marched across the street. I knew he would. His face was red. His jaw was clenched. And for a brief second, I wondered if he might actually explode. What in God's name is that? He demanded. I looked at my house. Tilted my head thoughtfully. Oh. I smiled. You mean the colors? His eye twitched. The color. Yes. I nodded. I think it's lovely. The girls were standing on the porch behind me trying not to laugh. Walter noticed. That made things worse. You painted the whole house pink. That does seem to be what happened. He pointed a shaking finger. Why? I could have lied. Could have said I liked it. Could have said it was on sale. Instead, I gave him the truth. Because sometimes the truth is funnier. You said you hated pink. For a second he just stared. Like his brain had stopped working. Then he realized. He realized I had done it intentionally. And suddenly he looked absolutely furious. You're doing this to annoy me. I shrugged. I'm doing it because it's my house. Then I smiled. And because I like pink. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No words came out. For the first time since I'd met him, Walter Jenkins was speechless. It was glorious. The complaint started the next morning. City Hall. Code Enforcement. Neighborhood Association. Building Department. Anyone who might possibly force me to repaint. Unfortunately for Walter, I had done my homework. The color violated no regulations. Every permit was in order. Every rule had been followed. The city inspector actually laughed when he came by. I'm supposed to investigate your dangerous paint. I laughed too. Should I be worried? He looked at the house. Looked at me. Looked back at the house. Nope. Then he grinned. My wife loves it. Walter nearly lost his mind when he heard that. But here's where things became interesting. Because something happened neither of us expected. People loved it. Kids especially. Every child in town knew exactly where the pink house was. Turn left at the pink house. Meet me near the pink house. My grandma lives behind the pink house. It became a landmark almost overnight. The local mailman started calling it that. Then delivery drivers. Then teachers. Then everybody. Even people who had never met me knew the pink house. Walter hated every second of it. The more attention it got, the angrier he became. Because attention was supposed to belong to people like him. Not struggling single mothers. Certainly not happy ones. A year passed. Then another. Then another. My daughters grew. The pink house remained. And something strange happened. Life got better. Not perfect. But better. I got promoted at the diner. Started managing shifts. Money became slightly less terrifying. The girls thrived. Sarah became class president. Megan discovered a talent for art. Lily became the funniest person I've ever known. And through it all, Walter watched from next door. Alone. Bitter. unchanged. The house annoyed him. But what truly bothered him was what it represented. Proof that he hadn't broken us. If you've ever been underestimated, judged, ignored, betrayed, or treated like you didn't matter, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's refusing to stay broken. Then came the first major twist. 10 years after the paint job. Sarah graduated high school. First in her class. Scholarship to college. I was so proud I could barely breathe. The graduation party filled our yard. Neighbors came. Friends came. Teachers came. The pink house was packed. At one point, I noticed Walter standing across the street watching. Alone. No family. No guests. No visitors. Just him. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt sad. Because I realized something. He had spent 10 years trying to make our lives smaller. While we'd spent 10 years building something beautiful. Only one of those paths leads anywhere worth going. The second twist came 2 years later. A developer approached me. He wanted to buy my property. Actually, he wanted several houses on the block. Including Walter's. The offer was huge. Life-changing money. The kind I'd never imagined seeing. Most owners sold immediately. Walter practically signed before the paperwork hit the table. He was thrilled. Finally, freedom from the pink house. Only there was one problem. The development couldn't happen without my property. And I wasn't selling. The developer increased the offer. I still refused. He doubled it. Still no. Because this wasn't just a house anymore. This was where my daughters learned resilience. Where we survived. Where we rebuilt. You can't put a price on that. Walter was furious. For months he tried convincing me. Then pressuring me. Then guilting me. Nothing worked. The project collapsed. The developer left. And Walter lost the biggest payday of his life. Because the single mom next door said no. I didn't celebrate. But I won't lie. The irony wasn't lost on me. Years passed. The girls married. Grandchildren arrived. The pink house remained. Every few years it got a fresh coat. Always the same color. Always bright. Always impossible to ignore. People began taking photos beside it. Then social media arrived. Suddenly the pink house was online. Visitors stopped by. Tourists even. Not many. Just enough. The house had become a local legend. And most people had no idea why. They just knew it had always been there. Like a cheerful little rebellion painted onto history. Then came the final twist. The one nobody saw coming. Not even me. Walter got sick. Age catches everyone eventually. Even bitter old men. One winter morning an ambulance arrived. After that I didn't see him much. Months later I learned he was moving. A nephew in another state would take care of him. The day the moving truck arrived, I was outside watering flowers. Walter walked over slowly. Much slower than he'd once moved. For a moment we stood there in silence. 30 years of history between us. Then he looked at the house. The pink house. The thing he'd hated more than almost anything. And he surprised me. You never changed it. I smiled. No. He nodded. Another silence. Then he said something I never expected. I thought you'd give up eventually. I looked at him. I know. He stared at the porch where my grandchildren were laughing. Then at the flower beds. Then at the pink mailbox. Then back at me. And for the first time in 3 decades, Walter Jenkins looked tired. Not angry. Just tired. You won, you know. I laughed. This wasn't a competition. He gave a small smile. The first I'd ever seen. Maybe not for you. Then he walked away. And that was the last conversation we ever had. Walter died 2 years later. Quietly. No drama. No grand ending. Just another human life reaching its finish line. I didn't celebrate. I didn't mourn either. I simply hoped he'd found some peace. Because carrying that much anger must be exhausting. Today I'm 65. The pink house is still standing. Still bright. Still cheerful. Still impossible to ignore. My grandchildren love it. The town loves it. New owners have bought houses around it. Businesses have come and gone. Generations have grown up. And somehow the pink house remains. A reminder. Not of revenge. Not really. A reminder that resilience lasts longer than cruelty. That joy outlives bitterness. That kindness can survive things that anger never can. Sometimes people ask why I never repainted it. The answer is simple. Because one day a frightened 25-year-old single mother needed proof she wasn't powerless. And every time I look at that color, I remember she wasn't. She just hadn't discovered it yet. If you've ever faced a situation like this, let us know in the comments. If you believe respect matters more than money, hit the like button. Subscribe to They Never Know It's Coming because sometimes karma takes its time, but they never know it's coming. Remember, the people who judge your value too quickly are often the ones who never see what's coming.